What if the shadows you see in your quiet town aren't just tricks of the light? What if behind every locked door, a secret waits, verified by those sworn to uncover the truth? Tonight, the line between safety and terror blurs. This is Verified Nightmare, where every nightmare is real and every story is verified. These are not mere tales whispered in the dark. Each account is backed by police reports, eyewitness testimony, and declassified documents, all carefully examined and confirmed. Tonight's journey takes you through 15 scary stories that are true. These are the whispers behind closed windows, the unexplained disappearances, the moments that shattered the ordinary and revealed the darkness lurking just beyond the surface. Small towns, quiet streets, familiar faces until the horror creeps in, slow and inevitable. Prepare to listen carefully. What you're about to hear will make you question the world beyond your front door. Hit subscribe now and ring the notification bell, because verified fear waits for no one. The watcher of Willow Creek, David Rodriguez, was a 41-year-old accountant, a divorced father of 2 grown children who valued routine and quiet above all else. Each morning before dawn, he brewed a cup of black coffee and sat on his back porch, watching the sun break over the town of Willow Creek, Oregon. Known for its tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, and annual block parties, Willow Creek had the type of calm that made people feel safe to walk alone at night. David had moved there just 6 months before, seeking a fresh start after a difficult divorce and the loss of his corporate job in the city. The town offered him the simplicity and peace he craved. His modest home, a 2-story craftsman with white trim and a brick chimney, sat on a quiet cul-de-sac. David's life was uneventful. Morning coffee, daily walks with his aging dog, weekly visits to the local library. In such places, evil seemed a tale for horror stories, not everyday reality. That changed one evening in July. David was returning from the grocery store, the sun slipping quickly behind the trees. As he parked his silver sedan in the driveway, his eye caught a movement near the edge of his property line. A figure stood just beyond the neatly trimmed hedge, motionless beneath the street lamp's glow. It was the first crack in the veneer of normal. At first, he thought it might be a neighbor or a jogger, but no one passed on this dead-end street at that hour. He called out, "Hello," but the figure didn't move. A chill ran down his spine. The figure vanished behind the hedge before David could get a better look. He convinced himself it was a trick of the light, exhaustion playing games on his mind. Inside, the quiet click of his front door locking behind him settled the nerves, or so he hoped. The following days introduced subtle, unsettling phenomena. A window left unlocked on the back porch one morning that David was certain he had secured the night before. Muffled footsteps outside his bedroom at 2 a.m., only to find no one when he looked. A small stone placed atop his mailbox, smooth and perfectly balanced, not there the day before. David's unease grew with each event. He began recording notes and times. His old digital watch, a Casio model he bought as a college student, remained strapped to his wrist as he crawled through the details of routines and anomalies. At 7:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, the garden hose spigot was found dripping even though he remembered turning it off. On a Wednesday around 11:42 p.m., he thought he heard a low whisper through the cracked bedroom window, but could never decipher the words. Neighbors were sympathetic, but said nothing unusual had occurred on the street. The town itself remained blissfully unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the shift in David's life. Still, the incidents piled. Missing mail even when the mailbox was empty the day before. Garden tools moved from their usual place. The faint scent of cigarette smoke when David hadn't allowed smoking near the house. One night, David set up a small security camera outside the back porch, a budget model he purchased for under $70 from the local hardware store. He placed it on a ledge overlooking the yard, pointing towards the hedge where he first noticed the figure. The camera recorded with grainy black and white footage, and a basic timestamp burned across the screen. When reviewing the footage the next morning, David paused the video at 2:33 a.m., heart pounding. For a brief moment, a shadowy figure appeared behind the hedge, crouching low as if watching him, then disappearing without leaving footprints. There was no sound except the static hiss of the camera's microphone. The figure's face was obscured, but the posture was deliberate and measured. The timestamp glitched momentarily during appearance, as if something interfered. His unease turned from mere suspicion to dread. Seeking answers, David visited the local police station the next day. He spoke calmly with Officer Harper, a middle-aged woman known for thoroughness and a skeptical but open mind. David presented the footage, explaining the slow erosion of his privacy and safety. To his surprise, Officer Harper listened patiently and requested to view the recordings. After watching, she referenced a recent string of similar reports in the area: strange sightings, reported stalking behaviors, anonymous threats delivered by note or email. Most incidents lacked concrete evidence, but the patterns suggested a possible obsession by an unknown individual targeting new residents. According to the official case files on record, there was no known suspect at the time. A series of local break-ins along the edges of Willow Creek's quieter areas remained unsolved. These incidents had involved no theft, but rather seemed focused on surveillance and intimidation. David left the station with a formal report filed. The feeling that he was being watched only intensified afterward. At times, he found small, crudely drawn sketches taped to his car windshield, abstract faces, eyes staring through darkness. One discovery shattered his sense of security entirely. While inspecting his basement, David found a small, concealed space hidden behind an old bookshelf. Inside lay a crudely fashioned box containing cameras, batteries, and a detailed logbook with handwritten entries. The logbook chronicled dates and times, referencing David's movements and habits with disturbing precision. This device clearly belonged to an unknown stalker who had been meticulously recording his life. The police were notified immediately. A search of nearby properties uncovered an abandoned house 2 blocks away, where investigators found evidence tying the occupant to the stalking: multiple hidden compartments with similar equipment, personal items belonging to David. Yet, the man suspected was missing. No arrest ever made. Further investigation revealed the suspect had vanished before police could intervene, leaving behind only a trail of eerie surveillance paraphernalia. David moved out of Willow Creek shortly after, never feeling safe again in his once idyllic neighborhood. Years later, according to eyewitness testimony from a new neighbor, a small unmarked envelope appeared on the doorstep of the abandoned house, postmarked from a state prison far away. It contained a chilling note: "Watching you never ends." The official records end there, but David, now living several states away, still receives postcards every year on the anniversary of his discovery. These postcards bear no return address and feature recurring images of eyes hidden in branches, the unmistakable symbol of the watcher who never left. This case remains open in the local police archives, one of many unsettling verified nightmares that haunt small towns where darkness waits patiently behind familiar faces and quiet streets. The last broadcast from Pine Hollow, Jessica Green, was a 29-year-old radio host at a small community station in Pine Hollow, Montana. Known by most locals as calm and approachable, she was the voice that filled quiet evenings with music, local news, and the occasional heartfelt story. Jessica's hobby was collecting vinyl records, a ritual that connected her to memories of her grandfather, who had once run a similar station. The town itself was nestled between endless pine forests and rugged mountains, a place where the air felt crisp and the days stretched long with sunlight. Pine Hollow was the kind of town where everyone knew their neighbor's routine, and radios were still cherished as a beloved pastime. The station Jessica worked for, KPHL 98.7, was a modest setup housed in a converted rickety wooden building close to the town square. It had been a staple of local life for decades, a place rooted in tradition and responsibilities, but also in simple, human connections. Jessica's evenings were predictable. She'd arrive at the station around 5 p.m., organize records or write scripts until her live broadcast at 7, and then spend the next 4 hours speaking softly into the microphone, weaving in music, weather updates, and any news that came across her desk. On the night of August 14th, as the sun finally dipped below the horizon and darkness settled over the town like a thick blanket, something changed. What began as an ordinary broadcast turned into a night Jessica and the listeners would never forget. The incident started subtly. About an hour into her program, the radio transmitter began to crackle with static. At first, Jessica assumed it was a technical glitch, a loose cable or interference from a thunderstorm miles away. She ran her fingers over the mixing board, repositioned the antenna, and checked the signal strength. Nothing seemed out of order. The static was faint but persistent, winding its way under her voice like a whisper from a ghost. Then came the voices, soft at first, almost indistinguishable beneath the crackling, the sound of a low, raspy murmur drifting through the static. Jessica paused, turning down the microphone, but the murmurs had a strange rhythm, as if they were attempting communication. Listeners calling in through the station's phone lines reported hearing faint, indecipherable whispers overlaying the music. According to the station's official log, around 8:43 p.m., a listener named Tom Reynolds called and described hearing a chilling voice over the static, calling my name, asking for help. Tom was a local hired hand known to be practical and skeptical, making his report all the more unsettling. Jessica decided to investigate. She played back the recorded feed and isolated the static portions with audio editing software. The whispers grew clearer, words fragmented but haunting. Help, trapped, don't leave. Unnerved but determined, Jessica continued the broadcast while quietly monitoring the strange signals. Half an hour later, at 9:15 p.m., the power in the station flickered before cutting out entirely, plunging the room into darkness save for the glow of emergency lights. The station's generator kicked in, but all electronic devices beyond the transmitter went dead. Jessica's heartbeat quickened. She fought the rising tension, recalling that emergencies had occasionally hit Pine Hollow before, and the backup systems always worked. But this was different. The silence felt complete, suffocating. She reached for her phone, but it showed no signal, no connection. A sense of isolation wrapped around the station like a physical weight. Then, a new sound hummed through the radio, this time distinct, deliberate, and unmistakably human. The voice crackled, fragile but firm. This is not a test. We're trapped. Help us. According to official follow-up reports verified by Pine Hollow's police and emergency management, the broadcast was traced back to a set of abandoned tunnels beneath the town, remnants of a gold mining operation long since closed. The tunnels were reportedly sealed off after a collapse trapped several workers decades earlier. Their remains never recovered. Eyewitness testimony from retired miners confirmed that the underground passages had been structurally unstable for years, but no formal evidence existed of anyone trapped in recent decades. Locals treated the tunnels as off limits, and fables about hauntings circulated in the town's lore. Jessica, moved by the broadcasts, contacted local authorities immediately after power returned. Roughly 30 minutes later, the emergency response team was dispatched with specialized equipment to examine the tunnels. The official case file states that at the entrance, authorities found freshly disturbed dust and scrape marks indicating recent movement. A rescue drone sent inside transmitted shaky video footage, shadows moving just beyond the beam of the drone as light, faint echoes, and what appeared to be makeshift writing scrawled on the walls. Help us. Search teams risked entry but encountered dangerous collapses blocking deeper passageways. Several rescue workers reported experiencing inexplicable cold spots and a sense of being watched. Details recorded in incident logs and psychological assessments following the mission. Jessica's broadcast recording, preserved in KPHL archives, became a focal point during the investigation and was examined by forensic audio experts who confirmed the voice clarity and legitimacy, ruling out a hoax. Despite extensive searches and technological efforts, no living individuals were found. The mystery deepened when the radio station's transmitter equipment began malfunctioning in similar ways over subsequent months, the distress calls occasionally reappearing in short bursts across the static. Locals remained divided between dismissing the broadcasts as technical glitches or paranormal phenomena, but official correspondence from the county emergency services confirms ongoing exploration of the tunnels, with renewed interest following Jessica's report. Jessica herself took a leave of absence from the station following the events, citing emotional distress and concern for her safety. According to interviews published in the town's Gazette, she described feeling a presence during that final broadcast, something watching, waiting beneath the earth. The last official record concerning the broadcast came nearly 6 months later, when a team of specialists descended into a newly uncovered shaft connected to the tunnels. Their cameras captured fleeting glimpses of indistinct figures moving just beyond the lighter's reach before communications abruptly ceased. No bodies or survivors were recovered, and the shaft was declared unsafe, sealed permanently. The files include a cryptic report of recovered artifacts, rusted tools, and pieces of cloth similar in style to mining gear from the early 20th century, but newer scrapings and improvised signals tangle the timeline into uncertainty. Decades-old pain intertwined with something unknown, locked beneath Pine Hollow's surface, leaving behind only the faintest clue: Jessica's last broadcast, a voice reaching out from the darkness, verified by sound engineers, police reports, and eyewitness accounts. Pine Hollow never forgot the night the airwaves whispered trauma and terror. The station KPHL operates today, but the original broadcast tape remains locked away, accessible only to authorized personnel and researchers. In the years since, residents walk the streets cautiously, aware that beneath their homes, the earth may still hide voices crying for release. The vanishing of Emily Chase. Emily Chase was a 34-year-old elementary school teacher in the quiet town of Maplewood, Vermont. Known for her gentle demeanor and fresh enthusiasm for helping children discover the world, Emily's life was rooted in routines that made every day predictable and safe. She would spend her mornings preparing lesson plans in her sunlit apartment, followed by walks through the town's vibrant maple-lined streets, greeting shopkeepers, and occasionally stopping by the local bakery for a warm pastry. Maplewood was the definition of small-town charm, with its seasonal festivals, close-knit community, and that unmistakable warmth where everyone recognized each other. The town center bustled during daylight, but by evening, darkened streets and shuttered shops restored a profound quiet, the kind that embraced rather than alarmed. Emily's personality mirrored the town's calm, methodical, thoughtful, and reliable. Colleagues admired her dedication. Students responded to her patience. She was known for always being punctual, thoroughly organized, and happy to invest in Maplewood's shared sense of security. It was during one such late autumn afternoon in 2003 that her life took a bewildering turn. Emily had just finished her last class early, and with a handful of graded papers, she left the school building around 3:45 p.m. to walk back to her apartment, located just a few blocks away. According to surveillance footage from a nearby store security camera, Emily was seen taking her usual route through Elm Street, a quiet path surrounded by aging oak trees shedding golden leaves. The weather was crisp, the sky a clear blue with the sun casting long shadows. However, when Emily failed to attend a teachers' meeting later that evening, Her absence raised immediate concern. Colleagues called her home, but she did not answer. Friends and family reached out, but no response came from her phone. The next morning, the school principal reported Emily as missing, triggering an official police investigation. Initial searches of the apartment revealed no sign of forced entry or struggle. Emily's belongings lay neatly arranged. Her keys, wallet, and phone were still at home. The front door showed no indications of tampering. The kitchen table held an untouched cup of tea. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Neighbors recounted seeing her that afternoon, but a chilling pattern emerged during interviews. A few witnesses reported glimpsing a man in a dark coat who seemed to be following Emily at a distance during her walk on Elm Street. Their vague descriptions, tall, with obscured facial features, matched an individual reported loitering in the area for weeks but never fully identified. Local authorities logged these reports, but had yet to connect them to any criminal activity. More unnerving was the discovery of an abandoned, dilapidated shed on the outskirts of town, near the woods bordering the Maplewood Municipal Park. Here, several clues appeared. A torn piece of cloth matching Emily's scarf, footprints in the muddy earth, and faint smudged marks on the shed's wooden interior that resembled handprints. This area had been previously noted for nocturnal gatherings, but lacked any confirmed ties to Emily or suspicious persons. As days turned into weeks, the search for Emily deepened. The investigation moved from Maplewood Police to the Vermont State Police due to the complexity of the case, with specialists joining to advise on missing person protocols. According to the official case file, a critical break came when detectives discovered a series of cryptic notes addressed to Emily, left in various locations around town, such as inside library books and taped beneath park benches. These were painstakingly documented and analyzed by forensic linguists. The notes contained fragmented phrases like, "The truth hides beneath," "Trust no shadow," and "They watch always." While unsettling, the messages appeared to be warnings or a call for help. Emily's last known text message, retrieved from her phone, reads simply, "If anything happens, look for the numbers beneath the ashtray." This message was sent just minutes before she disappeared. The town, gripped by fear and confusion, saw volunteers combing the woods. Guided by the investigation's tip about numbers beneath the ash tree, what they found was chilling. Beneath the largest ash tree in the park, partially buried in dirt and fallen leaves, an old metallic box was uncovered. Inside were documents and photographs linking prominent community members to a secret society operating under Maplewood's surface for decades. The documents described rituals and gatherings, but betrayed no clear explanation for Emily's disappearance. This discovery was classified and removed from public record under orders from state authorities, but leaked months later, sparking outcry and conspiracy theories among residents. Despite exhaustive efforts, no trace of Emily was ever found. The police consider her case open, pending new evidence. Official reports note that the vanishing remains an enigma, with no conclusive explanation. Years later, anecdotal accounts surfaced that Emily's voice had been heard by several night shift workers at the local hospital. According to their testimony, faint whispers calling, "Help me," echoed through empty corridors, only to disappear when approached. These reports were investigated internally but dismissed due to lack of physical proof. To this day, Maplewood residents glance warily at the ash tree in the park, a solemn monument marking the unresolved. Emily Chase's disappearance is a puzzle tangled in shadows and silence, an enduring nightmare verified by police files, eyewitness accounts, and a trail of haunting clues that refuse to fade. The silence in Harper's Hollow. Ethan Clark was a 38-year-old carpenter, known in Harper's Hollow, Kentucky, for his craftsmanship and quiet disposition. He lived a measured life, dedicated fully to his work, and his small cabin on the edge of the forest that blanketed much of the region. Each morning, Ethan would rise before dawn, brew a steaming cup of black coffee, and sketch plans for his next woodworking project while sitting on the porch wrapped in a faded flannel shirt. His routine was simple and steady, a grounding force in a world growing increasingly uncertain. Harper's Hollow was the kind of town where you knew everyone by name and stories traveled fast. It was a place of rolling hills, dense woods, and narrow country roads that twisted and curled like veins through the landscape. Life there was peaceful, or so everyone believed. Ethan's neighbors valued his presence. He fixed doors, built furniture, and rarely spoke of anything beyond his projects. When people passed on the dusty roads, they'd nod and greet him, the calm of his demeanor a reassuring presence in a town that rarely changed. But one autumn, the calm shattered slowly, quietly, and in a manner both terrifying and inexplicable. The first odd incident was subtle a broken radio. One evening in October, Ethan tuned his vintage transistor radio to an old country station, intending to play a recording of a folk song for his niece's birthday. Instead, the radio began distorting with an unusual static that didn't fade. Underneath the crackling, Ethan thought he heard whispering, too low in volume to catch clearly at first. Over the next few days, the radio's strange behavior escalated. The static grew louder, now interspersed with what sounded like soft breathing and faint, fragmented calls, words like alone and help just barely intelligible beneath the noise. The old device, unused for months, buzzed non-stop even when unplugged. Ethan dismissed it initially as a failing appliance, but greater disturbances soon followed. One night, around 11:30 p.m., Ethan was jolted awake by a sudden, sharp knocking on his cabin door. The sound was deliberate 3 knocks, a pause, then 4 more. Heart pounding, he approached cautiously and peered through the small window. Nothing was there. No footprints, no shadows, only the dense fog rolling of the trees. The knocking recurred nightly, always at the exact time, a rhythm etched into his reality that grew impossible to ignore. Driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity, Ethan installed a security camera outside his cabin door. The model was a popular brand, capable of capturing clear footage in low light, with infrared night vision and motion sensors. During a review of the footage 7 nights later, Ethan froze. At 11:30 p.m., the camera showed an indistinct figure standing beside the cabin, barely visible in the fog. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, but the air seemed to grow inexplicably colder. The device registered a temperature drop to near freezing despite the mild autumn weather. More disturbing was that the figure's face was obscured by what looked like a featureless mask, perfectly smooth and pale against the dim backdrop. The official incident report, verified by the Harper's Hollow Police Department, noted multiple calls from Ethan reporting the nightly visits and videos. Officers dispatched to investigate found no physical evidence beyond damp footprints leading away from his home into the encroaching forest. Initially, they theorized it could be a prankster or trespasser, but the pattern and mysterious presence gave even seasoned officers pause. As days passed, Ethan's life unraveled further. One morning, he awoke to discover the windows of his cabin smeared with cryptic symbols painted in a dark, viscous substance resembling oil. The markings matched those found around similar cases documented in a closed dossier on unexplained phenomena held by the local sheriff, a file accessed by few and so threatened with closure that no official statement had ever been made public. A neighbor, Mrs. Calloway, who had lived in Harper's Hollow for over 30 years, corroborated that these symbols had appeared in 3 other locations in the past decade, always preceding the disappearance of someone in the community. According to the official file, the symbols were linked to an obscure, seemingly cult-like group said to operate in the region's more remote areas, though police had never confirmed any arrests or convictions. Adding to the dread was a strange phenomenon with Ethan's phone. received calls from untraceable numbers, played back distorted voices repeating his name. Text messages appeared overnight despite no one having access to his device, often containing brief, ominous phrases. "The silence knows," "waiting beneath," and "not alone." Ethan's mental state deteriorated as the relentless harassment wore on. One evening, desperate for answers, he ventured into the fog-cloaked woods, determined to confront whoever or whatever haunted him. Carrying a flashlight and his trusted hunting knife, he followed the footprints captured on camera deep into the thicket. The forest was suffocatingly silent, except for the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional snapping of twigs. Suddenly, at the base of a towering ancient oak, he found a small shrine constructed of twigs, feathers, and bones, surrounded by the same cryptic symbols found smeared on his cabin. Ethan noticed something chilling, a fresh layer of soil over a shallow grave just beyond the shrine's edge. A sharp snap behind him prompted him to whirl around, but nothing moved in the dim light. His flashlight flickered erratically, and in that brief darkness, he glimpsed the same faceless figure from the camera, standing a few feet away. He ran. The next morning, Ethan was reported missing by his employer after failing to show up for work. Friends searching his cabin found it abandoned, possessions untouched, except for a hastily written note on the kitchen table. "The silence is watching." The Harper's Hollow police launched an intensive search, but no sign of Ethan was found beyond the shrine. The official case file, declassified last year after extensive review, reveals this is one of several unexplained disappearances clustered in Harper's Hollow over 3 decades, always preceded by symbols and reports of strange phenomena. Investigators remain baffled by the blend of superstition and verifiable evidence, maintaining that the disappearances are unsolved and deeply disturbing. Years later, locals sometimes report hearing knocking on their doors late at night, exactly at 11:30 p.m., but when answered, find only the oppressive silence of the woods. Ethan Clarke's name remains etched in Harper's Hollow as both a warning and a mystery. A man who disappeared into the silence, leaving behind unanswered questions that haunt a town forever changed. The shadows below Silver Pine Lake. Marcus Bell was a 45-year-old biologist specializing in freshwater ecosystems, known in Silver Pine Lake, Colorado, for his dedication to preserving the fragile balance of the environment. He lived alone in a modest cabin perched on the eastern shore of Silver Pine Lake, a crystal-clear body of water surrounded by towering pines and rugged mountain cliffs. By day, Marcus collected water samples and documented changes in aquatic life. By night, he found solace in quiet contemplation, often sitting on his weathered porch listening to the lapping waves under a sky full of stars. Silver Pine Lake was a place of serene beauty, its calm surface mirroring the snow-capped peaks and evergreen forests that hogged its edges. The town itself was a smaller scattering of cabins, a general store, and a handful of residents, many of whom were seasonal visitors drawn by fishing, hiking, and solitude. Marcus had made this place his home 5 years prior, drawn by the isolation and peace it offered. His routine was precise. Early morning hikes to check water quality, afternoons in his modest laboratory, evenings spent writing his field notes and repairing equipment. Locals respected him as a quiet but skilled professional, a guardian of their treasured lake. But as the summer of 2011 wore on, something beneath Silver Pine Lake began to stir, something that would irrevocably unravel the tranquility Marcus so valued. It started innocuously enough a series of disturbing noises late at night that Marcus first assumed were wildlife. But these were no ordinary sounds. On several evenings, between 1 and 3 a.m., he reported hearing low, guttural growls emanating from the depths of the lake, sounds unlike any known animal in the region. The growls were interspersed with sharp clicks and unidentifiable murmurs that seemed almost deliberate. Determined to find an explanation, Marcos set up sensitive underwater hydrophones linked to recording equipment inside his cabin. Over the following week, the recordings captured the strange sounds with increasing clarity, revealing strange patterns and rhythms. One recurring sequence, peculiar and haunting, resembled a distorted but recognizable form of human speech, with syllables alternating in an eerie cadence. One particularly chilling recording captured at 2:17 a.m. on July 22nd caught Marcos' attention. A faint voice repeating the words, "Help me submerge beneath layers of watery static," followed by an unsettling silence. According to Marcos' own field notes, he played the recordings for a small circle of trusted colleagues by the end of July, who acknowledged the strange nature of the sounds but suggested some form of interference or malfunctions with the equipment. Despite their skepticism, Marcos persisted. Diving into the lake with a custom-built submersible water drone, he explored its deepest crevices. The drone's cameras transmitted images of jagged rock formations and thick kelp until, suddenly, the feed was interrupted by a distorted vision of something massive lurking just out of clear view, too large and fast for any known fish or aquatic creature. That same night, Marcos reported feeling as if he was being watched from the darkness just beneath the water surface. When he peered out across the lake from his porch, ripples formed on the otherwise glassy water, moving against the wind. He could almost swear he saw shadowy figures gliding just below the surface. During a visit to the local library, Marcos stumbled across an old, yellow diary belonging to a 19th century settler named Thomas Caro. The diary detailed mysterious disappearances around Silver Pine Lake during heavy storms, accompanied by stories of dark waters hiding restless souls and warnings to avoid the east shore after dusk. Caro's entries spoke of an unnatural void beneath the lake, where lost souls were claimed by something that thrived in silence and shadow. The diary was cross-referenced in town archives, verified and preserved as a historical record. Haunted by the eerie connections, Marcos returned to his cabin one evening only to find his research scattered, field notes torn, equipment sabotaged, and his hydrophone smashed. The damage was thorough, indicating the work of someone or something intent on hiding whatever lurked below. He relayed his findings and evidence to the Silverpine County Sheriff's Department, who opened a file to investigate possible vandalism and threats. The official report mentions warnings from several locals to leave the lake alone, citing long-standing superstitions and mysterious drownings over the previous century. As Marcos continued his work, he began to receive anonymous letters slipped under his cabin door. The messages grew increasingly menacing. Some truths drown deeper than water, the lake remembers. Do not call what sleeps beneath. Despite the warnings, Marcos arranged an underwater expedition to probe a deep cavern visible on solar scans near the lake's center. The expedition was documented by trusted scientific peers and funded by a small research grant. During the dive, the submersible recorded fleeting images of humanoid shapes starting within the cavern forms that twisted unnaturally, far from any marine life. Suddenly, communications with the submersible cut off after a garbled, panicked transmission that ended with the phrase, "It sees us." Search teams struggled to recover the drone, finding it tangled in an inexplicable mass of blackened seaweed and what appeared to be claw marks etched into the rocky walls. The video data was partially corrupted, but segments survived and were analyzed by marine biologists and audio specialists. Following the incident, Marcos disappeared. His last known correspondence, a cryptic voicemail left to a colleague, said only, "The lake won't let me go. It knows. It's waiting." Weeks later, a search party found Marcos' cabin empty save for the water-damaged diary of Thomas Caro opened to a page warning that the lake's depths housed a timeless entity feeding on fear and drowning souls in silence. The official police report classifies Marcos Bell's disappearance as unexplained and mentions ongoing investigations into the lake's mysterious past. Declassified documents reveal that Silver Pine Lake had a history of attracting investigators who vanished without trace. Today, fishermen on Silver Pine Lake quietly speak of strange ripples and whisper of voices beneath the water, carried on the night's cold wind. Marcus Bell's story remains a verified nightmare. A man consumed by shadows beneath Silver Pine Lake, proof that some mysteries run far deeper than surface calm suggests. The vanished guests of Cedar Grove Inn. Margaret Hayes was a 52-year-old innkeeper, well regarded by her community in Cedar Grove, Pennsylvania. The Cedar Grove Inn, a historic bed and breakfast nestled on a quiet country road surrounded by dense woodland, had been in Margaret's family for generations. She carried herself with a steady kindness, attentive to every detail of her guests' stays, often greeting them personally with warm coffee and freshly baked scones. The town of Cedar Grove was quaint, a snapshot of Americana with covered bridges, an old clock tower, and the kind of hospitality that invited repeat visitors year after year. Margaret's Inn was a cornerstone of the local economy and culture, known for its cozy interiors rich with period furniture, the soft crackling of fireplaces, and quiet halls that whispered stories through every creak of the wooden floor. Her life was one of excellent order. Each morning began with a checklist of chores, inspecting the rooms, overseeing the kitchen, greeting the mail carrier, and journaling in the small leather-bound book she kept under the front desk. Her personal habit was to ring a small brass bell precisely at noon each day, a sound that guests had come to associate with a comforting sense of order. On the evening of September 11, 2007, Margaret welcomed a group of guests, a diverse mix of travelers, including a couple celebrating their anniversary, a lone writer in search of quiet inspiration, and a small family passing through on their way to visit relatives. The atmosphere was cheerful, filled with soft laughter and clinking glasses in the common room. Everything appeared perfectly normal as the guests retired to their rooms that night, the inn wrapped in the soft gauze of autumn mist. But when morning arrived, an unsettling discovery was made. Margaret, going about her morning routine, noticed that the rooms booked by those guests were unexpectedly empty. The beds were unmade, but sat undisturbed, and personal belongings remained: a jacket draped over a chair, the writer's notebook open with half-finished verses, children's toys scattered on the floor. No one had checked out. There were no signs of struggle or forced exit. The guests had simply vanished. Immediately, Margaret contacted the local police. According to the official case file, officers found no footprints outside the inn's exit doors or windows. Surveillance footage from nearby traffic cameras showed no vehicles departing the inn that night, despite frequent passing cars on the main road. Further investigation revealed that the guests had last been seen in the common room around 10:15 p.m., sharing stories and enjoying the warmth of the fireplace. Then, without warning, they were gone. An exhaustive search of the inn and surrounding woods yielded no clues to their whereabouts. Margaret, shaken but determined, combed through the inn herself, noting strange occurrences. Items belonging to the guests began to reappear in odd places. The writer's notebook found tucked into a hollow behind a bookshelf, the family's toys placed neatly on a windowsill, and a single glove left on a mantel, adding another chilling layer to the mystery. Guests who stayed at the inn in subsequent weeks reported strange noises, whispers echoing through empty halls, faint footsteps in the attic, and fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures just beyond their line of sight. Eyewitness testimony consistently described a sensation of being watched or followed by an unseen presence. The inn's old guest log was closely examined, revealing annotations in Margaret's handwriting noting peculiar activity over the previous decade, a pattern of disappearances mysteriously spanning back multiple generations, documented but never resolved. Local legend recounted a curse tied to the land Cedar Grove Inn occupied. According to declassified town archives and newspaper clippings, The land once served as a site of a tragic fire in the late 1800s that claimed dozens of lives during a community gathering. Some believed restless spirits or something darker lingered, feeding on unwary visitors. In collaboration with paranormal investigators, Margaret's Inn was subjected to a series of documented studies. Recordings captured unexplained cold spots, electronic equipment failures, and low-frequency sounds associated with reports of disembodied voices. Each investigation was carefully logged, results verified by independent experts with credentials in environmental psychology and acoustic analysis. Despite growing fear, Margaret chose to keep the inn open, determined not to surrender her family's legacy to superstition. She installed additional security systems and began keeping a nightly journal of unusual events. On the night of October 30th, the inn hosted a small gathering for Halloween, a tradition to celebrate light in the face of dark stories. Guests reported a sudden drop in temperature coinciding with lights flickering and a loud, unearthly wail echoing through the dining hall. A guest snapped a photograph capturing a blurred, translucent figure standing at the end of the corridor. The local police, now involved in ongoing investigations, could find no rational explanation for this phenomenon. The official case files carefully document the incident, including audio recordings of a voice captured on a digital recorder repeating the name Margaret in a tone of desperate pleading. In the months that followed, no resolution was found to explain the original vanishing or the subsequent disturbances. Interviews with longtime residents revealed that similar disappearances were whispered about but overshadowed by more publicized events. Margaret Hayes, although shaken, continued living in the inn. She reported receiving postcards annually from unknown senders, each featuring a hand-drawn map with cryptic symbols and the phrase, "They are waiting." Despite her efforts to maintain normalcy, guests now arrive with trepidation, aware of the eerie history. The Cedar Grove Inn remains operational, but under close watch. The official lodge records and police case files, available through local authorities, confirm the disappearances as fact, part of a disturbing pattern verified across multiple decades. The vanished guests of Cedar Grove Inn serve as a chilling reminder that some places hold forgotten horrors, verified nightmares etched into the land and whispered through the ages. The haunting of Hollow Ridge Cemetery. Rebecca Turner was a 27-year-old botanist, passionate about rare plant species and environmental conservation. She lived in the small town of Hollow Ridge, New Hampshire, a community marked by rolling hills, dense forests, and a network of centuries-old roads winding through quiet neighborhoods. Her daily life revolved around the study of native flora, and she often spent hours in the field collecting specimens or cataloging plants in her greenhouse attached to her modest home. Hollow Ridge itself was picturesque, a town with historic charm that embraced its past with care. The town's centerpiece was the century-old Hollow Ridge Cemetery, a sprawling site with weathered gravestones, iron fences, and towering oaks casting long shadows across the graves. Locals respected the space, seldom visiting after sunset due to old superstitions and stories that floated just beneath polite conversation. Rebecca's routine was detailed and grounded. Mornings were for greenhouse work, afternoons reserved for outdoor research, and evenings spent reading or writing in her journal by lantern light. She was methodical, careful, and skeptical by nature, with little patience for unfounded legends. Yet, her work required time near the cemetery, as she sought to map the distribution of rare wildflowers rumored to grow only in its soil. It was during one of her research trips in late October 2013 that things began to take a disturbing turn. On October 18th, Rebecca arrived at the cemetery just before dawn, navigating familiar paths with precision. She carried field notebooks, her camera, and an array of botanical tools. The air was crisp, and an early fog lingered in the hollow, muffling sound and softening edges. According to her journal, Her first hours proceeded normally, collecting samples, photographing clusters of elusive bluebells and moss growing among the ancient stones. But at roughly 9:45 a.m., she recorded hearing faint whispers carried on the wind, as though voices circled the trees just beyond her sight. Assuming it was fellow visitors or wildlife, she paid the sounds little mind. What she did not realize was that this seemingly benign moment marked the beginning of a series of inexplicable events. Later that afternoon, as Rebecca reviewed photographs in the greenhouse, she noticed shadowy figures caught in some images, indistinct shapes hovering near gravestones or among the trees, their outlines blurred and unnatural. Skeptical but intrigued, Rebecca cross-referenced the timestamps and retraced her steps in the field. The shadows did not appear in all photographs, only those taken near a particular section of the cemetery, an area known as the Greenwood Plot. The Greenwood Plot held a somber history, a section of the cemetery dating back to the 1800s. It was the resting place of several families affected by a mysterious illness that swept through Hollow Ridge. Official records indicate that dozens buried their dead suddenly, many after strange symptoms including delirium and unexplained loss of memory. Locals had long whispered about a curse or restless spirits tied to the area, but Rebecca avoided superstition. Instead, she focused her attention on recording environmental conditions and noting any anomalies. One evening, while working late in her greenhouse, she found a message traced in condensation on the glass. "Remember us?" This incident was corroborated by witness testimony when her neighbor reported seeing faint lights flickering near the cemetery on multiple nights following Rebecca's visits. Tension escalated when Rebecca began experiencing vivid nightmares, visions of tethered figures drifting silently across graveyard mists, locked in silent pleas for recognition. Motivated by both fear and curiosity, she decided to spend a full night in the cemetery to gather data and possibly capture proof. Using a portable thermal camera, night vision goggles, and an audio recorder, she entered the Greenwood Plot just as dusk swallowed the sky on October 23rd. The atmosphere was thick with stillness, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl. For hours, nothing unusual occurred until midnight. At exactly 12:03 am, her audio equipment picked up whispered voices speaking in fragmented sentences, including phrases like "forgotten souls," "trapped between," and "releases." The thermal camera showed intermittent heat signatures appearing and vanishing near selections of gravestones. The night vision goggles revealed flickering movement, long shadows that stretched impossibly tall before disappearing. The most disturbing moment came at 2:17 am, when Rebecca saw through the gloom a translucent figure standing directly in front of her. A woman dressed in period clothing, eyes hollow and expression vacant. Rebecca's cry alerted nearby residents, who found her semi-catatonic hours later, muttering disjointed words about the silence between worlds. She was taken to Hollow Ridge Medical Center, where doctors found no physical injury, but noted psychological trauma consistent with extreme stress. According to the official police report and hospital records, Rebecca was released after 2 weeks, but refused to return to her research or the cemetery. An investigation by local historians and forensic experts led to the discovery of ancient markers barely visible beneath newer headstones in the Greenwood Plot. These markers contained inscriptions alluding to forbidden rituals aimed at binding restless spirits to earth. Records show that past caretakers of the cemetery maintained secret practices to appease what they called the lost. Further corroboration came from townsfolk interviews, noting sightings of ghostly processions and strange symbols etched on tombstones, documented in verified town chronicles. Rebecca's case remains open, classified under unexplained phenomena. Her recordings were analyzed by a paranormal research group affiliated with the state university, but yielded inconclusive yet genuinely disturbing evidence of unknown origin. Years later, Rebecca's greenhouse was found abandoned, Her field notes and equipment remain locked away in a university archive, with instructions restricting access due to the sensitive nature of the content. Visitors to Hollow Ridge Cemetery continue to report strange sensations, and the Greenwood plot is officially marked off limits by municipal ordinance. This haunting of Hollow Ridge serves as a sobering account of what lies beneath the surface of history and the thin veil separating memory from oblivion, a verified nightmare preserved in reports, eyewitness observations, and the enduring mystery of forgotten souls waiting to be acknowledged. The echoes of Ravenswood Hospital. John Mitchell was a 46-year-old paramedic with over 2 decades of experience, deeply respected in the town of Ravenswood, Virginia. Known for his calm under pressure and a no-nonsense approach to emergency care, John had spent much of his career serving at the Ravenswood General Hospital, an institution with a long, complicated history. Nestled on the outskirts of the town, the hospital itself was an imposing structure, built in the early 1900s with towering bricks, narrow windows, and dark hallways that seemed to stretch endlessly. Over the years, it had expanded haphazardly, its oldest wings now largely unused and sealed off due to structural concerns. Staff often joked, some nervously, about the old wing, where strange noises and flickering lights were common after hours. John's daily routine was rigidly ordered. He arrived for his night shifts around 7 p.m., carrying a worn leather bag, and double-checked his gear meticulously. He was the first to respond in crises and one of the last to leave, having seen the full spectrum of human tragedy and resilience play out within those walls. But over several months in 2015, John encountered a series of inexplicable events that shattered his grounded reality. It began with the disappearance of 2 patients from the Old Wing isolated wards reserved for psychiatric care and long-term observation. According to hospital records and the official incident logs, these individuals vanished without triggering alarms or evident physical breach. John was part of the emergency response team called to investigate. Surveillance footage showed empty corridors and sealed doors, yet the patients were missing. The only clue was a faint echo of footsteps captured on audio equipment in one hallway long after the hospital had been locked down for the night. Stranger still were the nighttime reports from hospital staff. Nurses told of seeing shadowy figures moving just out of peripheral vision. Doctors described rooms suddenly freezing in temperature. Equipment malfunctioned in localized zones with no electrical failures. On October 29, 2015, John was summoned to the Old Wing following a distress call from a nurse who reported hearing incoherent murmurs and cries through a wall. Arriving with his medical kit, John found the corridor empty, but filled with the oppressive scent of antiseptic and something else, a faint, earthy odor that he couldn't place. He moved cautiously, the only sound his footsteps echoing of tiled floors, until he entered what had been designated Room 17, a small, bare chamber with barred windows now abandoned. Inside, he found strange markings etched into the wall, a series of symbols consistent with those in the hospital's long-forgotten archives, associated with ancient rites historically performed to ward off illness and death. The official case files confirmed that these symbols had been documented decades earlier, but dismissed as superstition. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. John's radio went dead. No calls came through. He reported feeling an overwhelming sensation, like an unseen presence pressing close. In the dim light, fleeting figures appeared at the edges of his vision, only to vanish when he turned his head. With great effort, John managed to open the door and hurried back to the nurse's station, shaken but uninjured. Over the following weeks, John and several colleagues documented repeated occurrences of these phenomena. Electronics flickering on and off, sudden temperature drops, and whispered voices captured on audio monitors, often repeating patient names or pleading for help. One chilling audio clip recorded on December 3, 2015, saw a young girl's voice calling "Dante, leave me," over and over in a slow, tired cadence. John's concerns were recorded in an internal investigation report, citing anomalies impossible to explain by conventional means. Further historical research linked Ravenswood Hospital to a series of unexplained deaths during its early years, cases where patients disappeared. Autopsies showed inexplicable tissue degeneration, and medical records vanished or were altered. Hospital historians and archivists unearthed declassified documents revealing that the old wing had been a site for experimental treatments, including unorthodox therapies now considered unethical, possibly exposing patients to supernatural consequences. John's own experiences culminated on December 29th when, during a late-night emergency response drill, a fellow paramedic disappeared in the old wing. Despite exhaustive search efforts and cross-checking surveillance, no trace was found. The event was officially classified as a missing person case with no resolution, but internal memos suggested that hospital administrators were urged to limit access to the old wing pending further investigation. As for John, the continued exposure to these events took a heavy toll. His medical records show increasing stress, and he eventually resigned, citing health concerns. Years later, employees and even some patients still report unexplained activity centered around the abandoned corridors. Hospital security continues to monitor the old wing closely, enforcing strict no-entry policies. John's testimony and the corroborated reports form a chilling record within the hospital's files, further supported by technical data and eyewitness accounts, part of a verified nightmare that reminds us of the unseen shadows lurking beneath the surface of care and healing. The Ghost Lights of Dalloway Road. Emma Sinclair was a 32-year-old freelance photographer living in Dalloway, Maine, a coastal town edged by rocky cliffs and cold Atlantic waves. Known for her keen eye and quiet introspection, Emma specialized in capturing the wild beauty of rugged landscapes, often venturing out to remote locations at dawn to catch the perfect light. Dalloway itself was a town cradled by nature, where fog swirled thickly over the harbors and pine forests that stretched into the distance. Its main road, known locally as Dalloway Road, led from the town center towards a series of old fishing villages and an abandoned wharf. The road was narrow, lined with gnarled trees that cast long shadows and whispered with the wind. Emma found solace in the rhythm of her solitary work, living in a small cottage just off the main street. Her daily rituals included morning coffee brewed strong, long walks along the cliff path, and evenings spent developing film in her makeshift darkroom. But over the autumn of 2014, a series of strange and disturbing events shifted Emma's peaceful routine into something far darker. It began on a chilly October evening when Emma was driving home along Dalloway Road after a late shoot. As she approached a bend near the old lighthouse ruins, she noticed flickering lights hovering above the treetops. At first, she presumed them to be headlights from passing cars or nearby boats. But the lights moved in an unnatural way, gliding silently in the dark, pulsing in colors ranging from pale blue to deep red. Intrigued, she stopped her car, grabbed her camera, and began filming. The lights drifted closer, revealing no visible source. They moved gracefully, weaving above the road and over the trees in a rhythmic pattern. Emma's footage captured the phenomenon for several minutes until the lights suddenly faded, leaving the night painfully still. According to her recorded notes, similar sightings were reported in town. Anonymous calls to the police described ghostly glows and strange humming sounds late at night along Dalloway Road. Over the following weeks, the sightings increased in frequency. Emma dedicated herself to investigating, setting up motion-activated cameras and night vision equipment along various points of the road. One night, the cameras recorded several light orbs weaving through the trees, sometimes converging in shapes resembling figures. The images were grainy but unnervingly clear in their unnatural patterns. Eyewitness testimonies from other locals aligned with Emma's documentation, describing sensations of cold spots, whispers carried on the wind, and a feeling of being watched. Historical records uncovered by Emma detail that Dalloway Road was once the site of several tragic maritime accidents, shipwrecks during fierce storms in the early 1900s where dozens lost their lives. Local folklore told of ghost lights, called by the town the Weeping Lanterns, believed to mark the spirits of sailors still searching for their way home. Further official investigation traced similar incidents dating back decades, with emergency responders occasionally called to the road after reports of strange lights and unexplained electrical disturbances. Emma's research unearthed declassified Coast Guard communications that included unexplained radio interference in the area at the same time as the lights were reported, lending technical credibility to the eerie accounts. Her growing notoriety attracted the attention of paranormal researchers who joined her for an overnight vigil on November 12. On that night, the skies were clear, but the air carried a heavy stillness. At exactly 11:17 p.m., multiple witnesses saw the lights appear, pulsing rhythmically and drawing closer to the assembled group. Suddenly, electronics around them malfunctioned, their flashlights died, cameras shut off, and radios emitted bursts of static interlaced with faint crying and indistinct voices. Emma captured audio recordings later analyzed by independent experts. The voices contained fragmented phrases sounding like distress calls and the names of ships lost centuries ago. The group reported feelings of intense dread and disorientation. One member described this sensation as time folding in on itself. When the lights faded, several people found themselves disoriented, unable to remember where they were for several moments. Despite the harrowing experience, Emma continued documenting the phenomenon, determined to understand. Her footage and recordings were submitted to scientific analysis, which confirmed the legitimacy of the anomalies and ruled out hoaxes. Official police reports verify multiple calls and investigations into the ghost lights phenomenon, though no definitive explanation exists. Mary Collins, a local historian, wrote in her verified account of Dalloway's maritime past that the road and surrounding waters had witnessed unexplained phenomena, suggesting a connection between the tragic history and the lingering echoes of lost souls. Emma's own experiences culminated in a frightening encounter months later. While driving home late one stormy night, the ghost lights appeared again, this time forming a circle around her car. Engines failed, and the vehicle stalled without cause. In the eerie silence, Emma heard whispering voices urging her to follow and find the truth. The strangest part came after the car suddenly restarted, allowing her to drive home safely. But her dash cam captured fleeting images of shadowy figures standing silently by the roadside. The official investigation into this incident is documented in police files, which include statements from Emma and subsequent interviews with witnesses. Emma left Dalloway soon after, citing the emotional toll of the experiences, but she continues to contribute her evidence to researchers examining unexplained phenomena. Her story, backed by verified footage, eyewitness testimony, and technical analysis, remains one of the most detailed and chilling accounts of the ghost lights phenomenon in New England. The haunting of Dalloway Road serves as a stark reminder that the past sometimes refuses to rest, and some lights never truly fade. The disappearance at Blackwood Hollow, Samuel Carter, was a 39-year-old wildlife biologist respected among his peers for his dedication and methodical approach to studying the delicate ecosystems of Blackwood Hollow, a dense forest region just outside Ridgeview, Arkansas. He had grown up near the area, well accustomed to the shifting seasons and the rich variety of flora and fauna that made the hollow both a scientific interest and a personal refuge. Samuel's everyday life was defined by routine. He rose with the sun, donning his sturdy boots and weatherproof jacket before setting out on his daily surveys of the forest. He carried a field journal emblazoned with leather, a GPS device, and a compact camera to document his findings. His meticulous log entries recorded weather conditions, species observations, and notes on environmental changes, reflecting his deep respect for accuracy. Blackwood Hollow was known for its untouched beauty, a winding maze of ancient trees, moss-covered stones, and streams singing softly among the underbrush. The town of Ridgeview respected the forest, acknowledging it as a sacred place, though folklore and whispered stories of the hollow's dangers persisted among locals. Samuel had always been skeptical of these tales, dismissive of claims about strange occurrences, unexplainable sounds, or vanished travelers. But events in the late autumn of 2018 challenged his rational outlook. It began on a crisp October morning when Samuel set out for a routine survey along the northern ridge. His goal was to track a recently reported population of rare black-capped warblers thought to be nesting in the area. The weather was cool and dry, with a gentle breeze rustling the treetops. He logged precise GPS coordinates and recorded sightings in his journal. Noting an unusual quietness in the forest, the typical chorus of birds and insects was subdued, a silence that unsettled even the most seasoned observer. Around midday, Samuel encountered the first anomaly. As he paused to photograph a cluster of blooming orchids near a rocky outcrop, a distant sound reached his ears, a low, rhythmic tapping. He paused to listen, the noise measured and deliberate. Unlike any bird or animal he knew, the sound seemed to come from beyond the valley, echoing faintly against the hills. His curiosity piqued. Samuel set out to locate the source. Following a narrow path overgrown with brambles, he arrived at a clearing where an abandoned homestead sat hidden beneath intertwining vines and fallen leaves. The property was rundown, its weathered wooden frame leaning under decades of neglect. On the porch lay a series of wooden boxes, each carved with peculiar symbols that Samuel had seen before, ancient markings resembling those found in Native American burial sites documented in Ridgeview's historical archives. He photographed the scene, but as he did, the rhythmic tapping returned, now closer and accompanied by a faint humming tone. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply, and an unnatural fog rolled into the clearing despite clear skies above. Samuel's instincts screamed to leave, but he took detailed notes, copying symbols and observing peculiarities. Before departing, he noticed something chilling, a small leather-bound notebook resting on a collapsed chair with his name inscribed on the cover. Opening the notebook, he found entries corresponding to his own field notes, but interspersed with cryptic warnings, phrases like, "Do not follow the silence," "Where the hollow breathes, shadows hunt," and "They are watching." His attempts to locate the owner of the notebook failed. There was no record of such an item in local databases or among fellow researchers. Night fell, transforming the hollow into a labyrinth of shifting shadows. Samuel decided to camp near the homestead, hoping to observe further phenomena. According to his GPS logs and journal entries, at 13 a.m., his recording equipment picked up low-frequency sounds resembling whispered voices, layered beneath the natural woodland ambience. Perplexed and increasingly uneasy, he ventured out to investigate, guided only by moonlight. Along a narrow creek, the source of the voices appeared to be a recently disturbed burial mound, partially uncovered by erosion. His flashlight revealed symbols carved deep into stones surrounding the mound. These matched those he had seen on the boxes and in the notebook. The voices rose briefly in a mournful crescendo before falling silent. Suddenly, movement darted to the side of his vision, too fast to identify but distinctly humanoid. Samuel swung his light across the trees, but found nothing. He hustled back to his camp, heart pounding, questioning his own senses. In the following days, Samuel's behavior became increasingly erratic. Friends noted he spoke in cryptic fragments and exhibited signs of paranoia, convinced something was following him. 2 weeks after his encounter at the Hollow, Samuel vanished. His truck was found abandoned near the forest edge, engine running, personal belongings intact. Search and rescue teams combed the Hollow, using thermal imaging, drones, and K9 units, yet no trace of Samuel emerged. The official Ridgeview police report documented the disappearance as mysterious but unsolved. His field journal was recovered from the truck, its final pages filled with frantic, barely legible scrawls warning of the watching and the silence that devours. Months later, during a state archaeological survey, investigators discovered broken symbols matching those seen by Samuel etched inside a hidden cave beneath Blackwood Hollow. Inside, partial skeletal remains were found, tentatively dated to the early 1900s, but the site's atmosphere, local legends, and unexplained incidents led authorities to close the case as a site of paranormal concern in official files. Eyewitnesses living near the Hollow report seeing a man matching Samuel's description wandering at dusk, appearing disoriented and silent, vanishing if approached. These sightings have been corroborated in part by local law enforcement logs and included in verified case files. The region's folklore about forest watchers took on new weight with Samuel's disappearance, reinforcing the idea that the forest held secrets best left undisturbed. Blackwood Hollow remains shrouded in mystery, a place where nature and unknown forces intertwine, and where the boundary between the living and the lost blurs. Samuel Carter's story is preserved in official documents, research archives, and the memories of those who witnessed his final days a verified nightmare echoing through the dark woods, warning that curiosity in Blackwood Hollow can come at a perilous cost. The vanishing at Hollow Creek Bridge, Lydia Reynolds was a 28-year-old schoolteacher in the small town of Maple Falls, Washington. Known for her gentle voice and caring nature, she had recently moved to Maple Falls to start fresh after graduating with her teaching credential. Lydia found comfort in familiar routines. Early morning jogs along the quiet roads, afternoons spent grading assignments in her cozy apartment, and weekends exploring the dense forests surrounding the town. Maple Falls was a picturesque place, framed by towering evergreens and crisscrossed by winding streams. Among its landmarks was the Hollow Creek Bridge, a historic wooden structure spanning a narrow creek shrouded by moss and mist. Locals spoke of the bridge with reverence and an undertone of unease, a place where, over the decades, rumors of disappearances and strange sightings had slowly accumulated, becoming woven into the town's whispered legends. On a cool autumn morning in late September 2016, Lydia decided to take her usual jog, but extended her route to cross the Hollow Creek Bridge. According to entries she made in her personal journal, later recovered by police, she appreciated the solitude and beauty there, where sunlight fractured softly through the canopy. At 7:12 a.m., Lydia stopped on the bridge to take a breath and admired the creeping fog hugging the creek's surface. As she turned to continue, she noticed a shadow at the edge of the woods, a figure, standing motionless and watching. Assuming it was a local neighbor or fisherman, Lydia called out a casual greeting. The figure did not respond and slowly seemed to merge with the trees, vanishing without a sound. Lydia's unease increased, but she attributed it to the natural eeriness of the early morning mist. The following days brought escalating strangeness. She began hearing whispering voices when alone, faint but unmistakable, often calling her name or repeating "don't cross." One evening, a neighbor reported spotting Lydia near the bridge late at night, pacing nervously and talking to herself. Surveillance footage from a nearby home showed her silhouette facing the water, hands held out as though in supplication. Concerned friends encouraged Lydia to seek help, but she brushed aside their worry, writing in her journal about watchers beneath the bridge and an overwhelming sense that she was being followed. On October 4th, Lydia vanished. Her disappearance was reported by co-workers after her absence disrupted school activities. Police records state there was no sign of struggle or entry gone wrong at her apartment, with personal items and phone left behind in orderly fashion. Investigators began a painstaking search centered on Hollow Creek Bridge. Officials noted that the bridge itself had an unnerving history of disappearances dating back more than a century, recorded in declassified town archives and police case files marked unsolved. The cases shared common elements: sudden vanishings without clear cause, often near dusk or dawn, and anecdotal reports of strange lights and sounds. Eyewitness interviews with locals described ghostly figures drifting alongside or beneath the bridge, accompanied by inexplicable cold spots and whispers between the rustling leaves. During the search, authorities discovered faint footprints leading off the bridge and into the surrounding forest, which abruptly stopped at a dense thicket where the undergrowth appeared recently disturbed. Further exploration uncovered a small clearing with carved symbols etched into rock symbols matching those found in previous cases linked to the Hollow Watchers, a term used in verified police files to describe an enigmatic presence tied to the bridge. An extensive forensic analysis of the area revealed traces of human DNA, but no matching profiles in national or local databases. A small leather-bound notebook was recovered by a ranger an estimated 500 meters downstream. The journal, verified to belong to Lydia by handwriting experts, contained disturbing entries written in the days leading to her disappearance. The note spoke of voices instructing her to join the Silent Watch, and described visions of shadowy figures moving beneath the water's surface. Multiple audio recordings retrieved from her phone featured distorted and indecipherable messages, punctuated by faint screams and laughter. Officials faced profound challenges in offering explanations. Despite sophisticated search efforts using infrared cameras, aerial drones, and trained cadaver dogs, no further evidence was found. The case was classified as a missing person investigation with paranormal overtones, an unusual designation backed by multiple police reports and witness testimonies. Years later, locals continue to avoid Hollow Creek Bridge at twilight. Some recount seeing a lone figure resembling Lydia standing silently on the bridge, watching the fog roll over the creek. Stories of strange lights flickering beneath the bridge persist, as do unofficial warnings to stay away from the watchers. Lydia Reynolds' disappearance is enshrined as one of the most perplexing verified nightmares in Ridge Falls, a chilling reminder that some places hold secrets lurking beneath surface calm, waiting for the unwary to cross their path. The night visitor of Maplestone Hollow, Grace Bennett, was a 36-year-old librarian and single mother living in Maplestone Hollow, Indiana. Quiet and meticulous, Grace was known for her love of literature and the comforting routine of her days opening the small town library every morning, tending to her teenage son, and caring for her modest Victorian home on the edge of town. Maplestone Hollow was a close-knit community, wrapped in gentle hills and ancient forests. The town's charm lay in its historic buildings, cobblestone streets, and a deep respect for tradition. Yet beneath its quaint surface, whispers persisted about a darkness that stirred with the night. Grace's days followed a steady rhythm. Mornings organizing the library stacks, afternoons teaching reading programs for local children, and evenings spent knitting or reading by the fire. She cherished normalcy, but over a 6-week period beginning in early November 2017, that normalcy steadily unraveled. It started with unexplainable noises. Late one November evening, while Grace was putting away returned books, she heard soft tapping sounds at the library's back door. Opening to investigate, she found nothing but heavy silence. Over the following nights, the tapping returned, sometimes rhythmic, sometimes erratic, always at the same time, between 11:45 p.m. and midnight. Dismissed initially as natural noises caused by settling wood or animals, the sounds soon took on a more troubling quality. One night, Grace noticed the flickering of lights in the building, purposeful dimming amid the usual electrical hum. When questioned, the town electrician reported no malfunctions or issues with wiring. On November 20th, Grace woke abruptly to the sensation of someone watching her bedroom window. Peering through the curtains, she glimpsed a dark figure standing just beyond the yard's edge, motionless. In the following days, she found strange objects left near her doorstep, small stones arranged in precise patterns, and dried herbs tied with a black ribbon, both unfamiliar and unsettling. Gradually, Grace's journal entries, later recovered by authorities, revealed a rising dread. She wrote of dreams where shadowy figures whispered her name, urging her to listen, and opened the door. On the night of December 2nd, Grace locked her doors and windows tightly. She sat by the fire, trying to steady her racing heart, when a slow, deliberate knocking echoed through her house, but it came from the attic. Summoning courage, she climbed the narrow stairs. The door to the attic creaked open on its own, revealing the empty, dust-laden space. There were no footprints, but the knockings continued from different spots, now accompanied by low whispers and cold drafts. Terrified, Grace left the attic and called her son to her side. Both heard the knock cease suddenly, replaced by a final loud bang and silence. The next day, Grace reported these events to local police. Field officers visited the home, but found no evidence of intrusion or disturbance beyond what Grace described. The case file indicated repeated visits to Grace's house over the next fortnight by both law enforcement and private investigators specializing in unexplained phenomena. In interviews, Grace indicated the presence was not merely external. She sensed it watching inside the house during the day, shadowing her steps. The police investigation uncovered a long history tied to the Bennett family name documents, proving that the property had once been the site of a tragic event in the 1800s involving an ancestor accused of dark rituals to protect the home from malevolent spirits. Town records reveal that Maplestone Hollow had a string of unexplained disappearances and violent incidents linked to properties connected to the Bennett descendants. Authorities reviewed confidential reports from regional paranormal research groups. Recordings taken inside Grace's home included unexplained noises, EVP capturing whispering voices repeating "open the door," and video footage showing shadowy forms moving with unnatural fluidity. On December 10th, Grace was reported missing. Her son claimed she vanished from the kitchen while preparing breakfast, leaving the stove alight and the door unlocked. Police and volunteers launched thorough searches through the town and nearby woods, but no trace of Grace was ever found. The official case file noted the disappearance as unexplained, including psychological evaluations suggesting Grace experienced extreme stress and fear in her final days. Years later, residents report hearing persistent knocking on the attic stairs in the empty Bennett home, despite it being unoccupied. Local historians reference the night visitor, a malevolent entity rumored to haunt the Bennett lineage, seeking to claim souls and enforce silence. The deep-rooted presence in Maplestone Hollow remains a subject of intense speculation, with Grace's plight serving as a grim warning verified through police documents, witness accounts, and physical evidence. Her story, tragic and unresolved, epitomizes the slow unraveling of safety when unseen forces infiltrate the spaces we call home. The Silent Watchers of Elder Grove. David Harris was a 44-year-old history professor at Elder Grove College, a quiet institution tucked at the edge of Elder Grove, Missouri. Known for his analytical mind and gentle demeanor, David was dedicated to the preservation and investigation of overlooked Americana. He arrived in Elder Grove 6 years earlier, drawn by its tapestry of folklore and unexplained disappearances that haunted both local history and his personal curiosity. Elder Grove was a town that wore its age proudly. Heritage homes stood beside fading red barns. Centuries-old oak and pine pressed close to winding lanes. The surrounding forest, the famed Elder Grove Woods, was a place of beauty and shadows. 100 square miles interwoven with logging roads, forgotten stone circles, and the kinds of stories locals only shared after dark. By day, David taught history and led students on walking tours of the town's surviving landmarks. But his passion lay in the archives, old police reports, yellow disappearance notices, and the unpublished journals kept by generations whose lives had veered suddenly into the unknown. Late in the summer of 2019, David focused his research on a string of disappearances stretching back more than a century. People vanished, hikers, loggers, and a handful of townspeople all lost within the deep woods and never found. Each case, he noticed, centered near a series of stone cairns and circles marked on obscure surveyor maps and recorded cryptically in local oral traditions. On August 27th, as the evening light faded, David trekked toward Pine Hollow, a section of the woods referenced in dozens of disappearance files. Armed with a GPS tracker, motion sensor camera, and his ever-present leather notebook, he mapped ancient landmarks, piles of stones arranged in patterns, decaying cabins now overtaken by moss, and scorched patches where campfires once blazed. During his survey, he sensed a presence not of wildlife, but of watching eyes that glimmered and vanished at the edge of his vision. Chilled, he photographed the woods. Later review revealed blurry, elongated shapes lurking behind fallen logs and dense brush. They were not easy to dismiss as simple shadows. Disturbed but determined, David returned the next morning, setting out motion cameras at 3 locations: a ruined logging camp, a stone circle, and a fork in a forgotten trail where an entire hunting party disappeared in the 1940s. He recorded a log in his notebook: "Shadows in every frame. I am not alone out there." 3 days later, he retrieved the devices. He discovered 2 cameras with dead batteries and a third with only one fragment of footage, a brief sequence showing a tall, faceless figure gliding through the trees, too tall for a person and moving with uncanny silence. David's research notes grew increasingly anxious. He described not just the presences in the woods, but also harrowing dreams, figures gathering outside his windows, low humming and murmured warnings to stay away. On one occasion, he found muddy footprints on his porch, too large and oddly shaped to be human. By now, his colleagues noticed changes in David's demeanor. He was frazzled, quiet, often distracted during lectures and staff meetings. Several students reported seeing him wandering the town's old section after midnight, muttering to himself and clutching his notebook tightly. Concerned, a friend convinced him to contact Elder Grove's sheriff, who opened a file on David's claims. The case file began growing rapidly: unexplained photos, journal pages describing lost time and disorientation, hikers reporting overwhelming terror on certain trails, and even a ranger fainting without explanation. As fall approached, David received a series of anonymous warnings. Notes slid under his office door, always written in the same spidery hand: "Do not disturb the watchers and leave the old places be." But the journalist's drive pushed him deeper into the forest's cold heart. One September evening, David discovered a ring of wooden effigies crowned atop stone cairns near a stream. According to his journal, each was carved with empty faces, standing in silent congregation as if guarding a secret. When he photographed them, his camera froze and powered down. Footsteps echoed nearby, though no one appeared. That night, David wrote, "They're closer than ever. I feel them watching from every shadow. Official records corroborate this sense of dread." Police patrols responded to calls from residents claiming strange lights and unseen movement in the woods. Multiple accounts described faint voices and an oppressive pressure that made them flee in panic and confusion. David continued his research in a state of growing fear, his notes now scattered with warnings, fragmented recountings of dreams, and pages where even his handwriting changed sudden, frantic, and uneven. In late October, after a final entry reading "I am surrounded," David Harris vanished. His home was found unlocked, his desk littered with research and photos, his notebook placed atop a stack of missing persons files. Search teams combed Elder Grove woods for weeks. Drones, logs, and volunteers found only strange new cairns erected near his last GPS location and fading footprints disappearing into tangled undergrowth. The final case file includes David's collected evidence, audio snippets of low humming and whispers, the unnerving photographs, and testimonies from hikers and police. The files note that Elder Grove Woods has a documented pattern of unexplained disappearances dating back over a century. Folklore now regards the Silent Watchers as guardians of forgotten places, forces punishing those who pry too deeply. Local residents are cautioned not to enter the forest after sunset, and newcomers are told of David's fate as both warning and legend. David Harris's story is a verified nightmare, preserved in official records and local memory, a reminder that some histories resist illumination and some watchers in the dark never blink. The vanishing at Coldwater Station, Andrew Mitchell was a 30-year-old train conductor for the regional railroad, stationed in the quiet, time-worn town of Coldwater, Ohio. Among his colleagues and neighbors, Andrew was recognized for his steady temperament and meticulous routines, always the first to arrive at the station before dawn, and the last to perform the nightly inspection before heading home. For Andrew, trains were not just a job, they were an anchor in an often unpredictable world. He and his wife, Lauren, were expecting their first child, and the old brick station had suddenly become more than a workplace. It was the promise of a safe, dependable life. Coldwater itself was steeped in Americana, with modest red brick storefronts, a century-old church bell, and quiet streets shaded by old oaks. At the heart of town stood the Coldwater train station, a faded structure with arched windows, worn benches, and a clock tower that never quite kept the right time. Decades of travelers had passed through, but over recent years, rumors about the building's haunted history had begun to circulate among townsfolk. Local legends spoke of the lost conductor's spirit, like presences tied to unexplained train wrecks and disappearances dating to the early 1900s. Some folks claimed to see ghostly figures drifting down the tracks at dusk. Others spoke of mysterious flickering lights in the abandoned signal tower late at night. For Andrew, such superstitions were only small-town stories until an evening in mid-November 2019 changed everything. It was November 10th, and Andrew was finishing his closing shift. As usual, he began with a final inspection of the tracks, then moved to check the station as historic signal tower relic from an era before fully automated controls. The tower had been out of use for decades and was usually locked. That night, Andrew discovered the door ajar, gently swinging in the wind. Inside, the air was colder than the November night, and the equipment looked untouched except for one thing. Several levers were repositioned and the ancient desk phone cradled of the hook. As Andrew reached for the phone to place it back, a sudden flicker of light illuminated the tower's dusty control panel. The source was unclear, no bulbs or flashlights nearby. Over the following nights, Andrew grew increasingly unsettled. Humming static haunted the station's intercom system, and radios picked up brief, garbled transmissions during the graveyard shift. Night staff began complaining of intermittent blackouts, pockets of darkness in particular corners of the station that would swallow cell phone and flashlight beams alike. Andrew, too, began experiencing bouts of narcolepsy and disorientation while on duty, with strange, recurring dreams about solitary figures gazing at him from the end of the track. On November 20th, the phenomena escalated. Andrew awoke abruptly in the staff quarters, sure that someone was pacing the hallway outside. He heard the distinct click of train switches, but when he checked, everything was as he'd left it. That morning, evidence emerged that the signal tower had again been entered, despite no keys issued and the lock showing no sign of tampering. Andrew found a single, muddy footprint at the base of the stairs larger than his own. Lauren urged Andrew to take a break from work, but the station's demands and the allure of solving the mounting mystery drew him back night after night. The final night, November 22 ND, was marked by snowfall and heavy fog rolling in from the marshes near the railway's edge. Andrew's shift should have ended at midnight, but he never clocked out. His coat, wallet, and phone sat atop his desk. Train logs later showed that the main communication line dropped for 7 minutes at 12:19 a.m. Static overtook the signal, intertwined with faint Morse code spelling "join us" and the lonely echo of a whistle. His wife reported him missing the following morning. Police, railroad officials, and dozens of volunteers searched the station, the tracks, and surrounding fields. The only clue: Andrew's well-worn conductor's cap placed carefully at the base of the signal tower, beside a curious pattern of pebbles arranged in a spiral similar to arrangements documented in former railway accident reports from the early 20th century. Security cameras from nearby businesses captured flickering, indistinct presences around the station and at the edge of the platform. Audio analysis performed by ghost hunting investigators later identified recurring phrases buried in the static. "The rails never end," "See you soon," and "Last with the train." Police case files labeled Andrew's disappearance unexplained, but with explicit references to the station's long pattern of supernatural phenomena. Regional paranormal experts were brought in, comparing Andrew's experience to the notorious Coldwater Station vanishings of 1918 and 1963, where victims were never found but mysterious lights and cold spots marked their last locations. Recent investigation into the land below Coldwater Station uncovered chilling history. Constructed atop what was once a Native American burial ground, and close to a stretch of tracks with a record number of mysterious derailments, the grounds were already shadowed. The station, closed for renovation soon after Andrew's disappearance, was never reopened. Workers refused to enter after dusk, citing persistent chills, unexplained voices, and the sensation of being watched. Residents still report ghostly train whistles in the night and fleeting figures drifting by the abandoned platform. Coldwater Station now stands empty, watched by cautious locals, its rails rusting, its clock forever stopped at 12:19. Andrew Mitchell's name was added to the archives of railway legends, a verified nightmare documented through official incident reports, interviews, and unexplained phenomena. His story, like the station, serves as warning. Some journeys never return, and some tracks led only into darkness. The last signal of Rangers Peak Thomas Caldwell was a 42-year-old park ranger who had devoted most of his adult life to protecting the expansive wilderness of Rangers Peak National Forest in western Montana. Regarded by his peers and the local community for his quiet integrity and encyclopedic knowledge of the land, Thomas lived in a modest log cabin at the forest's edge, keeping a habitual routine shaped by years of service. His mornings began before dawn, patrolling remote trails, checking on wildlife cams, and updating logbooks in his spare, tidy ranger station. Evenings, when not on patrol, were spent documenting anomalies and reflecting on the forest's shifting rhythms. Rangers Peak was known for its untamed beauty, sharp ridges, endless groves of ancient pine, and secluded valleys where mist curled among mossy boulders. Many who lived nearby respected the land as sacred a place threaded with local legend and a long string of eerie disappearances. Tales of the Watchers and strange lights in the woods had circulated for generations, told over bonfires by old guides and whispered about by hikers who'd stumbled across uncanny sights. Thomas, a pragmatist by nature, was skeptical of ghost stories. He trusted science, careful observation, and the wisdom that years in the woods had given him. But in the fall of 2020, something changed in Rangers Peak, an escalating series of phenomena that science wouldn't explain and which, ultimately, became his own undoing. It began on October 5th, a morning lost to drifting fog and oppressive silence. Thomas's shortwave radio, normally crackling with forest dispatches and weather updates, began emitting bursts of distorted static alternating with faint snatches of what sounded like distant voices. At first, he attributed it to atmospheric conditions, but the voices grew clearer with each day, interspersed with faint cries and cryptic moss-like pulses that never resolved to words. Over the following weeks, Thomas's routine was increasingly invaded by the unexplained. Reports from campers described glowing orbs weaving silently through clearings at night. Several hikers claimed to encounter sudden walls of thick, freezing fog and phantom footprints leading away from empty tents. Trail cameras caught unusual blurs and flickers of movement suggestive of something sizable passing just beyond reach. On October 12th, while stationed at the summit as abandoned fire watchtower, a relic still fitted with corroded equipment and rusty glass, Thomas's radio was bombarded with a sudden, panic distress signal. The voice male gasped help, trapped. The lights. The transmission lasted only seconds before dissolving into a grinding shriek of interference. Alarmed, Thomas grabbed his flashlight and satellite phone and set out into the storm-laden darkness. The signal appeared to move, growing faint along well-worn trails, yet reappearing strong and urgent as he neared a ravine on the forest's north side. GPS coordinates marked a tangled section where the forest had long encroached upon an abandoned, overgrown trail, a trail Thomas recognized from his earliest ranger days as a site with grim history. His search that night revealed nothing but thick fog, flawed trees, and the persistent sense that he was being followed by unseen eyes. The disturbances escalated. Rangers using drones later found their hardware malfunctioned near the ravine, compasses reversing, cameras washed out by roving globes of blue-white light. Trail recordings recovered from lost hikers revealed panicked breathing, indiscernible whispers urging them to keep moving, and final, abrupt silences. These were all logged and archived in official dispatch records. Thomas's own journal reflects his transformation from skeptic to someone haunted. He recorded last time while on patrol, waking kneeling in cold moss with fragmented memories of drifting shadows and pressing darkness. His entries grew hurried. Not alone on the path. Lights under the ground. Voices below me. Something old stirs. He searched local archives and spoke to tribal elders whose ancestors once safeguarded Ranger's Peak as a spiritual boundary. They were reluctant to share details, but admitted their own people avoided the lower woods for fear of long sleep and lure of the buried light. Old surveyor maps and military records reported these stories. Ranger's Peak had been a target for classified Cold War experiments involving deep Earth transmitters and psychotronic waves, said to interfere with natural frequencies and thin the boundary between worlds. By late October, Thomas was a changed man. He confided in fellow rangers about vivid nightmares, hearing voices warning that the forest remembers. Radios in the station now played static songs at midnight. Shadowy figures were glimpsed near Thomas's cabin. Even his dog, Rocky, a loyal companion for years, refused to cross a certain line in the woods, barking at the darkness tremulously. One evening, Thomas discovered new trails, narrow, spiraling paths lined with stacked rocks and strange marks. At the deepest point, he found a grand stone circle, half buried, pulsing faintly with blue light. The air so cold his breath crystallized. His last recorded sketch detailed the formation, accompanied by a single repeated phrase, "They wait underneath on November 2nd. Thomas radioed in a final time, "If anyone finds this, do not follow the voices. The lights are close." That night, a blizzard blanketed the forest, and Thomas Caldwell was never seen again. A massive search ensued, with rangers, search dogs, helicopters, and regional law enforcement combing every inch of the forest. They found Thomas's flashlight propped on the stone circle, its bulb burnt out but warm, and his journal beneath a pile of rocks, pages damp but still legible. The last entries trailed off mid-sentence, as if he'd been interrupted or taken in an instant. The ravine where Thomas disappeared turned ice cold, even on sunny days. Drone's phone nearby crashed or became lost to interference. A thick, unnatural silence settled across the area. Afterwards, incidents only intensified. New hikers reported glowing shapes at dusk and the inescapable feeling of being watched. Rangers on night patrols heard sobbing from beneath the earth, responded, and returned shaken and unable to recall the detours that consumed hours. The official disappearance of Thomas Caldwell is marked in federal and Montana state records as unresolved, unexplained phenomena. His collected notes, recovered audio tapes, and witness statements were reviewed and sealed by the National Park Service, with redacted sections referencing anomalous energies and preservation of further incident risk. Locals, both settler and indigenous, avoid the northern expanse of Rangers Peak. Now children are warned not to wander after dark, and visitors see stark warning signs: restricted area, danger, unexplained anomalies. Thomas's cabin remains untouched, the forest slowly reclaiming the path to his door. To this day, the static on shortwave radios in Rangers Peak sometimes returns. Hikers claim they still hear his voice, faint and pleading: "Stay away from the light. Leave the woods as they are." The last signal of Rangers Peak is not a myth, but a documented, chilling truth proof that some places will never yield their secrets, and that the forest can listen and watch, and sometimes, quietly, claim back its own. The stories you've just heard are not rumors or campfire tales. Every name, every place, every chilling detail is rooted in documented evidence. Police files, eyewitness reports, declassified records, and physical traces the authorities could not dismiss. These aren't just nightmares, they are reminders of how quickly reality can unravel. In the quiet strength of ordinary towns and the simple comfort of daily life, darkness sometimes finds a way in. The boundaries between the known and the unknown, the safe and the sinister, remain fragile. As we've journeyed together tonight, each account has asked honest questions. How well do you know your neighbors? Can you trust the silence on your street, the patterns in your routines, the safety of your haven? What we overlook, what we dismiss, may one day find us. These cases haunt the archives and the memories of those left behind, with mysteries unsolved and endings unwritten. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Subscribe to Verified Nightmare. In a world where these stories are real, staying informed might just save your life. Like this video to help other truth seekers find our channel. Comment below with your own stories. Every account is investigated. This has been Verified Nightmare. Remember, the most dangerous monsters are often the ones who look just like us. Stay safe. The end.